Welcome to the Byline Podcast. My name is Emory, and this is episode 10. Now, that's pretty cool. Welcome back to the Byland Podcast. My name is Emory, and this is episode 10. I honestly can't believe I have 10 of these things now. It's been really great and kind of challenging, but I think all the guests so far have been awesome, and I know I've learned a few things from them, so welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're a new listener, hey, thanks for checking me out. If you're a returning listener, thanks for keep coming back. I really appreciate it because someone's listening, and that's really great. So this episode is all about optics, and I reached out to Brendon Weaver at Maven. They are a consumer direct optics manufacturer. They make spotting scopes and binoculars. You can customize them. You can't get these in stores. You can only get them through ordering online, but they have some solutions if you're kind of weird about that, and Brandon will get into it. So if you are looking into optics and you're a birder or a wildlife observer or a hunter and you don't know what the heck you're looking at and you don't know why you need to pay so much money for a piece of glass, you're going to find out in this episode what all the numbers mean, what you're getting for that money, and kind of a little bit of a guidance on how to choose your first optic and where to go from there. Brendon is a co-founder of Maven. He's an awesome guy. I had a great conversation with him. He knows what he's talking about. He can go in the weeds, but we don't on this episode because we're just doing building blocks here for this episode. No need to go crazy. So I think you're going to enjoy it. If you have questions about optics, this is the episode for you. If you have no idea about optics and you kind of want to learn about them, this is for you. If you have optics and you want to add to your kit and you want to know more about your optics and how to get better performance out of them and what you actually paid for, this is the episode for you. So without further ado, Brendon Weaver, Maven Optics. It's going to be great. Enjoy the episode. Well, Brendon, thank you so much for coming on. I am kind of a noob to optics, and you are kind of like an expert in optics, and you know a lot. So let's do a quick introduction of who you are, what you're doing, and where you come from.
Great. Thanks for having me, Emory. I'm Brendon Weaver. I'm one of the co-owners, founders of Maven. We build high-end binoculars, spotting scopes, getting into rifle scopes. We've been in business now for about 5 years. We've had products for 4 of those years. Just kind of had our 4-year anniversary. We are a direct-to-consumer company, so a little bit different than what you see out there. We were the first ones to do that kind of thing on the optics side, and we do customization, so you can get on our website and build a binocular how you'd like it to look, how you'd like it to feel. And so that's kind of where we are. That's just a little bit about our company.
Well, I think I'm enjoying this direct-to-consumer model that some brands are going to, and I think that was one of the reasons why I wanted to reach out to you guys, because when you see, at least for me as a consumer, when I see a new brand come on the market and it looks a little bit different, it's not like your traditional, like a brand that's been around for 30 years. I know that I have questions, but at the same time, I'm thinking, well, someone somewhere clearly knows something about optics or this item. They're not just going to get into an industry willy-nilly. So I was kind of thinking it'd be a good idea to talk to you and be like, hey, let's talk about optics from the Maven point of view. And
right.
And where I'm coming from, and the point of this podcast is to kind of break down any barriers to like the unknowns. Like, I'm new to optics, and there's a lot of things I don't understand. And when I start digging in the weeds and I start doing my own personal research on, okay, if I'm going to buy a set of binoculars, what am I going to buy? And then I see all these price ranges. Right. And we had a previous conversation about coatings and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, now I'm officially confused. And I want my money as a normal person who doesn't get paid millions of dollars and, money doesn't grow on trees. I need my dollars to go as far as they can. So, right. What's interesting about this timing of the podcast is I live in the Pacific Northwest. I hunt the brush, and optics have never been like a thing for me. I've gotten away with, not using them, but I had this experience this last season where I officially believe in optics. I jumped into a stand of trees. I started picking apart. I had purchased a nice pair of binoculars. Never really had them pay off much. And until this one moment where I started picking apart the brush and found 2 really nice blacktail bucks hiding in the bushes. And I would have never seen them had I not had optics on me. And they were 70 to 100 yards away. I couldn't find them.
I think what happens for people is that it's hard to justify, like any activity that you take a part in. If you really love it, there's, you can spend as much money as you want in it. And for something like what we do, for some people, it's hard to justify. Is it something that is that important, or I'm going to spend that much money on an instrument? And it's for, just like you said, it didn't make sense until it made sense. You're standing there and you're like, I don't see anything, and now I see something. And so, for a lot of people, they're never going to be in that situation. And so those people probably don't appreciate what spending the money can get them. If what they're after is just simply, whatever it is I'm doing, if I go watch football games, sporting events, if I'm, just a backyard bird watcher, that really all I need is to magnify what's out there. 'Cause that's really all a binocular is. At its basic form is it magnifies what you're looking at. And if you need nothing more than that, then you're crazy to spend a lot of money on binoculars, because you can really spend a lot of money and have something that is just way beyond what you actually need.
Okay. So in my case, now that I have like this, I mean, I'm serious, like something changed in me that day, because it was a difference between there's no deer in this stand of trees and now there's 2 nice bucks. So now I'm like, well, how many have I passed up on? Okay, I'm going to sink my teeth into this thing. So can you kind of coach me through what, as a new optic buyer, even if I'm not hunting, if I'm just going backpacking and I want to find animals at the end of the day while I'm sitting up on this bluff, what do I need to take into account, and where do I start?
Well, I think it's like a lot of things, and you hate to say that this is where you start, but really where you have to start is placing the importance on the budget. Okay. Because you can spend $25 on a binocular, and you can spend $2,500 on a binocular. So what you have to decide is how important are the features that I get from spending $2,500? Does that make it worth it? And at a base level, what you're going to get when you spend a lot of money on a binocular is you're going to get better low light performance, and you're hopefully going to get true color, because excuse me, as a manufacturer of a product, what I want to give somebody is something that an instrument that doesn't get in the way of what they're trying to see. Okay. But that's an expensive process. It requires expensive glass. It requires expensive coatings. And that's what you're paying for, is for somebody to have something that performs almost better than their eyes perform in low light. And as Maven, what we've decided is that we want to provide something that is as true to the color that you see without a binocular as it is when you're looking through the binocular. Now, if you spend $25 on a binocular, it's really only going to be a magnifying glass. You know, you're going to just magnify whatever it is you see in the field. And that may be fine, you know, but as you upgrade, that's what you're getting. You're getting something that's, you know, for hunters, it's critical to have something that performs in low light, because you can be out there before sunset and you're out there after sunset, you know, and so you want to make sure that you're ready to go when there's shooting light. Now, bird watchers are another huge market out there, and they want, you know, I think the low light stuff is important to them because they want it to perform when they're under the canopy of trees, if they're in a darker forest, but it can also be early and late. But the thing I think that they're looking for, maybe more so than hunters, is true color, because that's how they identify, you know, what they're out there looking at.
So I have a budget in mind, or I mean, I guess if I'm looking at it, I'm thinking like maybe I don't have a budget in mind, but I have needs in mind. Like I'm a hunter, so I need that low light performance. I would imagine that the selection of an optic has to do with the type of terrain. So if I don't need a crazy high power binocular because I'm hunting a stand of trees, that should be taken into account. I would imagine. So a low light, I don't know, where do we go from there?
So what I would say is that you start off with a budget range. And so, you know, if you walk in and you're like, this is an important activity for me. So I'm going to step up to something that I feel is high quality. And so you're going to make a judgment there about where to start. Excuse me. And what I typically tell people is that if you're buying this for hunting, what you're going to end up doing by spending the kind of money that you would on one of our products. Now, we have two different levels right now. We have a high end and kind of a mid range. But if you're looking at the high end, what you're allowing yourself to do is you're going to get, you know, depending on where you are, 20 to 30 minutes more light early and late.
That's huge.
And so for somebody who, you know, you have a limited amount of days that you can be out and do this. And for a lot of people, you know, this is how they spend their vacation.
Yeah.
You know, this is how they save up all this time off so they can go out and do some hunting or whatever it is. If they're traveling to be, you know, to bird or any of that kind of stuff, you're extending the time you can be out there doing this activity by having a high performance glass. And so that to me is key, is that the low light performance is what you're really going to see when you step up into what I would say is a high end glass, like our B series or our S series spotting scopes. It extends the day for you, and that to me that's huge, because those trips are not cheap, and you want to be out. You know, when you're out there and enjoying it, you want to be able to take advantage of every single minute that you're out there. So I think that is key, is that it extends the time that you're able to be out there. And like you said, it not only does it do that, but it puts you in places and helps you recognize things that you had no idea were there, the things that you were missing.
Sure, yeah. So this low light performance, if I can just clarify real quick, on a very, you know, building blocks level, how does an optics builder achieve this low light performance?
It's a combination of the quality of glass that you're using and the coatings that you're using.
Okay.
And we could go way down the rabbit hole of what that means in technical specs, but I can tell you what we look for, and I mentioned it before, is the true color that you're going to see, and what you'll see in a lot of our competitors is, and this goes all the way from, you know, if you're spending $100 on an optic to thousands of dollars, is you'll see a variance in the hue that kind of goes across everything that you're looking at.
Okay.
A lot of glass you'll look through and it'll seem yellow. And some manufacturers do that intentionally because they feel that it makes what you're looking at appear brighter by introducing yellow and having that something that, I mean, you can do that through the coatings that you're using.
Okay.
Some of our competitors have more of a blue hue to it. Some of our competitors have more of a red hue to it. But what we try to do is what we kind of call a flat light. And it's so that when you're looking at something, it's the true color. And that's what we go for. And that can all be done through coatings.
That's interesting that I mean, it makes sense but I think that's just an interesting note just in general for people to take in, is like every brand is going to have a different way to, that they want to optimize their objective. And
right.
That's why there's multiple brands out there. Right.
Right. Yep.
So
exactly.
So we talked about, what about can you walk me through, so I have a purpose in mind. I have somewhat of a budget in mind. For me, it's kind of the opposite. I go with purpose first and then the budget. And then if I see a number too big, I'm like, oh no. Let's back that thing down a little bit.
Yep.
But that's just where I'm at right now. Like I'm just now finding value in really quality optics. So now I'm like, well, maybe that budget just grew a little bit because like you said, my time in the field. I mean, you kind of blew my mind a second ago by saying that an optic of any kind, maybe not any kind, but a scope or binoculars or a rifle scope can improve your time in the field. You know, you can see more, because I was in the trees before the sun came up, not even looking through my binos, because I didn't even think to myself like, well, I can't see, so it can't see. And that might not always be true.
That's correct.
So,
I think where people start and where you want to start, and it's one of those things that I think most people are a little bit embarrassed to ask about. Even people that have used optics professionally in the field, we get asked all the time. Sometimes, they want to whisper it to us because they don't want to be embarrassed, but they're like, what do the numbers mean?
Yeah.
What is a 10 by 42? What is a 15 by 56? What do those numbers actually mean? And it's a great question, because I think it's one of those things that people have identified their binocular. I have a 10 by 42, and that's what I love to use. I wish it was a little bit bigger, and I wish I could see a little bit longer with it. I wish it magnified a little bit more, but that's what I want to have. But what they don't realize is that's what those numbers indicate. So when you're talking about a binocular, or anything, a binocular spotting scope, the first number, the 10 by 42, or if in a spotting scope, the 20 to 60 by 80, that first number is the indication of the magnification. So if it's a 10 by 42, that means that it is magnifying whatever it is you're seeing out there 10 times. If it's an 8 by 42, it's magnifying it by 8 times. If you're looking at a spotting scope, that's usually a higher number. It can be a 25 by 80. That's magnifying it 25 times. If you're talking about a zoom, which has a variable zoom on like a spotting scope, a lot of those are 25 to 50 by 80. So the 25 is the low end, and it magnifies all the way up to 50. And what that means to you, and the difference that happens when you go from 8 to a 10, with an 8 power, you have a bigger field of view. And so what that means is when you're looking out there, if you kind of put your hands out in front of you and make a circle with them, so you've got your thumbs on the bottom, fingers on the top, and like you're looking through a tube, from edge to edge, that's what the field of view is. Okay. And if you hold your hands out, just say, maybe 5 inches in front of your face, that's one field of view. And let's say that's what you would see if you were looking through an 8 by 42. When you increase that number, when you say go to a 10 or a 12 or a 15, you decrease that field of view. So you're magnifying things more. And in effect, what it is if you move your hand out away from your face with that circle still, you can see that you're decreasing that field of view. And that's what that first number does.
So it's like looking through a soda straw?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So the 8 power, you see more of the field. It's less magnified. a 10 power, you see less of the field. It's more magnified. The thing that happens when you increase that number, though, that you always have to take into consideration is it magnifies everything, including the steadiness of the operator.
Okay.
I'm a little bit shaky. And so when I get up over about a 12 power, right around a 12 power, I start having a noticeable shake in it. So I need to excuse me, I need to either rest that on something, I need to sit down and brace my elbows on my legs, or I need to use it with a tripod. So that's kind of the downfall of when you really start getting up there in magnification, is it becomes very, very difficult to hold steady. So that's what the first number is. It's the magnification. The second number, so in the 8x42 or a 10x42 or a 10x25, the second number is the diameter of the objective lens. So the objective lens is the lens that is the farthest away from you. Okay, you've got the ocular lens, which is the one that goes when you put the binocular up to your face, is right against your eyes. And then you've got the objective lens, which is the one on the other end. And so the 42 means that is that the width of that lens is 42 millimeters across.
Okay.
If it's a spotting scope and you hear a 25 to 50 magnification by 80, that means that the width of that objective lens is 80 millimeters. What happens when the lens gets larger, so if you go from a 8x42 to an 8x50, is you get more light. You get more light to your eye, which means it's going to be a brighter optic. It's going to typically perform better in low light. But what you lose in that is, I guess you could say you lose, because the weight goes up. So if weight is a concern, you probably want a smaller binocular. When you have a 50 millimeter objective lens, it's going to weigh much more than a 42 millimeter objective lens, which is going to weigh more than a 32 millimeter objective lens. So where you've got a compact binocular that's, say, a 10x30, that's going to be a smaller bodied binocular. The magnification is still the same. So if I have a 10x30 and I step up to a 10x42, I'm still going to get that same magnification. The field of view could be a little bit different. But when I go to a 10x42, I'm jumping up into a much bigger binocular with a bigger objective lens, which means it's going to be a brighter binocular. It's going to perform better in low light. So if the low light performance doesn't matter to you at all, I typically recommend that people use a smaller compact binocular.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that's the numbers are key, and it's funny to me, and I've heard it so much that it's really surprising to me that the basis for the optics is something that a lot of people just don't really know what they mean, or didn't know what they mean.
Well,
and also don't know the benefit of what a 10 is over an 8, or an 8 over a 10, or having a bigger objective lens, what that means to them.
As someone that was, so I purchased my first real quality optic a few years ago, and I probably wrestled with that decision probably for weeks, because I have that buyer's remorse built into me that I'm like, I just spent probably. Oh,
I bought the wrong thing.
Yeah, but I don't even know. A guy that okay, I'm about to spend $1,200 to $1,300 on an optic. This better be freaking useful. And then not only that, but you're like, okay, there's 10x42, there's 8x42. I ended up going with an 8x42 because for some reason, you just got to start somewhere. And I read a forum somewhere that was like, you know how many Google searches I got? I did between 8 and 10. Like, I was like, what's better, 8 or 10? 8 or 10?
I know. And everybody has their opinion, and everybody can justify it. And it really comes down to just, I guess, what's most important to you as a user. Is it that you need to magnify everything out there more? Is that really what's going to be key to improving your experience in the field? Is seeing out there just seeing the things that are out there a little bit farther and being able to magnify them? Or is it that because an 8 power will perform, it's got what it's going to perform better in low light than a higher magnification does. Mm-hmm. So that's, I think, across the board, and it's hard to generalize, but most optics people that do what I do, choose a lower magnification because it is overall a better performing binocular.
I think that's a really important note.
The ones that I use of ours, and I tell you this, that that is not reflected in our sales. Everybody, I guess everybody is strong, but the majority of people want the higher magnification.
Well, I mean, it makes sense on the surface.
Yep. But I know that the performance is better in a lower magnification because I'm getting more light to my eye in an 8x42 than a 10x42 because of this thing called the exit pupil. Mm-hmm. And what that is very simply the first number divided into the second number. So you divide 8 into, I'll make it easy. We'll talk about an 8x50 and a 10x50. The 10 goes into 50 5 times. So you've got 5 millimeters of exit pupil. The bigger that number is, the exit pupil number is, the more light you're getting to your eye. As that decreases, the optic becomes dimmer. And so I think that for me, at least, when I'm in the field, is key. And that's why I've always liked a lower magnification binocular. That, and like I mentioned before a little bit, is that I'm a little bit shaky. So if I get too high up there, I have to sit down and brace myself against something. So,
well, that's interesting. I wish I would have had this conversation years ago because it seems far more clear to me what, I usually hunt the trees, and so magnification, crazy magnification. Yes. Do I want to be able to see really far? Yeah. But I also read an article about the 8 power, how it's a really great field of view. Like, it's a good quality field of view. You get the magnification, and sometimes if you have too much of a magnification, you can blow over animals that are inside that distance. Like, you're basically seeing past them. And I was like,
right.
That's an interesting fact. So if I'm in the trees versus if I'm scanning a hillside, a half a mile away, clearly I might need a little more magnification if I want to really dissect that hillside. But if I'm in the trees, I don't want to blow past an antler that's hiding in the bushes.
Right.
And that's why I went with the 8, and it's been great. But then I have this experience a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, well, shoot, like I was able to pick out this deer's face and nothing more, like literally an eyeball, an antler, and a nose. And I was like, with an 8 power, and I'm like, I wonder what the drop off is. If I went to a 10x50, I'm happy where I'm at, but now I'm kind of looking at my tool bag. I'm looking at binos as like a tool bag or a spotting scope and saying, okay, my next purchase, I really enjoy having a 8x42s seem to be very compact. They're lightweight, quick field of view. You can pick them up and go. You don't get the shaky. But then now I'm looking at, okay, how can I add value to my optics decisions going forward? Should I go with a spotting scope, or should I go with a high power binocular and set them on a tripod? So where do you find? So that's my next question: binos, high power binoculars versus high power spotting scope. Where do you see people making those decisions?
It's different for everybody, which doesn't make it easy to answer when someone asks you. A lot of hunters love to sit on a hillside and glass with a spotting scope. Yeah. One of the issues that you run into is fatigue because you're looking through something with one eye. And after a while, that can get really old. Yeah. So it's much more comfortable to look through a binocular for an extended period of time for some people than it is to look through a spotting scope. So I would say that that's a consideration.
Okay.
the thing that you also want to think about is how I think we're kind of gearing it more towards the hunting angle. Is how do you hunt? Are you a backpack hunter? Are you a horseback hunter? Are you I drive to the location and I walk around a little bit and hunt, because the weight factor really starts to play into those.
Yeah.
If you're an ounce counter and you're trying to carry the absolute minimum out there, I recommend, if you're going to only carry one thing, is to probably carry, and again, it depends on how you hunt, where you hunt. If you're an East Coast hunter, this is different. If you're, you're hunting in Alaska, it's different. But for the most part, you're going to want to carry a big binocular.
Okay.
Because otherwise you're going to have to carry two optics.
Yeah.
I personally carry two optics because I like to, if I'm going to spend a lot of time out there, I like to be able to have my binocular with me all the time, have it on my chest, be able to pull it up and look. But I also enjoy sitting there and using my spotting scope for hours and just looking around that way. But it's such a personal thing to how you hunt. You go east and people don't use a lot of spotting scopes to hunt with. Yeah. Like you were saying, if you're typically glassing 100 to 200 yards, then you definitely don't need a spotting scope, and you don't need a high-powered binocular. Now you might get a larger binocular. You might get from our line, you might get a 45 millimeter objective just so you get a little bit more light. But it's hard to steer somebody without actually going out and hunting with them and seeing how they use their equipment. And, I think you find that with backpacks, you find that with clothing. Do people like to layer? And so it's like that. It's luckily for me, my toolbox is pretty full of optics, so I don't have to, I'm lucky that way that I can change my decisions all the time. But the way that I hunt is I take out a binocular and a spotting scope because I think there's big benefits. And we're in Wyoming, so there's a lot of big country that you need a spotting scope for. But like I said, it varies depending on where you hunt.
Is there I've seen some pretty big numbers for spotting scopes. They go out there pretty wide, and maybe this is a myth, but I read in my research, I read a article or a post or something by someone saying at a certain point, your return on I don't know if it would be considered a return on investment, but we'll say like the return like on the optic, you're gonna start seeing variations in like maybe quality of imagery when you push it out that far, like. If there's going to be a drop off, or maybe if the glass isn't good enough, you might deal with like heat wave issues. Does that ring a bell?
Well, heat wave is one of those things that I think people get a little bit confused about, because that exists out. All an optic does is magnify what is out there, and heat waves are heat. If you're looking out across, probably the best example is if you're looking out across the desert, and there's heat waves to the naked eye.
It's gonna be bad.
An optic doesn't get rid of that. You can't do anything in an optic to make it get rid of that. So, some people will tell me, oh, I had this one binocular, I had the spotting scope, and it completely eliminated heat waves. And
right.
I don't even choose to. I just shake my head.
Yeah.
Because I have never seen that. That's just something that you have to deal with, and that's it's a thing that's in that you deal with, an atmospheric condition out there. A binocular can't help that. The thing that you may be referring to, I guess, I'm not totally sure. I understand the question, but I think what happens because spotting scopes are so much more expensive.
Yeah. And
the reason is that it's that big piece of glass out on the objective lens. That glass, in any optic, that's where you're spending the money, is the quality of the glass. And when you get an 80 millimeter objective lens, and depending on what type of glass it is, that's where you're spending the money. But what happens is when you start getting into these high-end glass, in order to make, say, a 1 or 2% jump in light transmission, which is how much light gets from one end of the instrument to the other, because if you took a toilet or a paper towel roll, a toilet paper roll, and you look through it, it has nothing between you and whatever it is you're looking at. That's 100% light transmission. But looking through a paper towel roll isn't helping you any. So that's where the optical system comes into place. But as you put pieces of glass or a prism and coatings, as you put those between you and whatever it is you're looking at, you're taking some of the light transmission away. So what optics manufacturers are trying to do is get that as close as they possibly can to 100%, which is at this stage is impossible. That it can't be done. They may figure out a way to eliminate through coatings and types of glass, but right now it can't be done. And so what you're paying for when you get up into the very, very high end is you're paying for a difference in what might be 0.5% in light transmission. Now that can be a certain, it's like I mentioned earlier, that can keep you out there a couple extra minutes. But what you have to decide, is that worth it? Because that's where it gets very expensive from our side to make that very small jump. If you go from a let's say $100 optic to a $500 optic, you're going to see an incredible jump in performance. When you go from a $500 to $1,000, you're not going to see that same kind of jump. You're starting to pay for very small increments of improvement. When you go from 1,000 to 2,000, you really have to know what you're looking for to spot those things. Now, there's also there's a lot of people out there who just want to pay the most because they assume it's the best.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of those people out there as well. And optics manufacturers compete with each other saying, well, ours is the best because of X, Y, and Z. And I think one of the kind of basics for our brand is the what we talked about earlier was the direct to consumer model that we have. Is that you're getting something from us that would cost usually in the 2/3 more if you were paying for it at a store. If we're selling you something for $1,000, if we sold that to a retail shop, you're probably going to be paying anywhere from $1,800 to $2,000 for that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So your return on investment that you mentioned earlier is going to be better from a company that sells direct than from somebody who's selling in a shop, just because you don't have that other markup in it. So I know we kind of steered away from the original thing, but that's hopefully explains it a little bit.
No, and it was kind of a difficult question because when you explained the difference between the 65 objective and the 80, that's kind of what I was talking about. Was like, what am I getting? Like, and when you said the explanation with the toilet paper roll, and how you explained that was probably like the best explanation of light transmission I've ever heard. And I'm sure you've used that one a number of times because you have to explain things to dummies like me. But I'm sitting there, I'm visualizing the toilet paper roll being like 100% transmission. You start putting things in front of it, even if they're clear, and they're going to start degrading the light. So you have to, the manufacturer has to find ways around that. So you make it bigger, you make it higher quality. But when you said that the jump from a 65 objective to like an 80 millimeter objective and what you're earning for that, plus, you look at the cost increase, plus the light transmission, increase in light transmission, clearly people sell those large optics, so someone finds them valuable, but are you that person that finds that increase in that cost valuable? Right?
Right. And a lot of times for hunters, what it ends up boiling down to is because there's a lot of great optics out there. and, in that high end range, and it'll come down to weight and size.
Yeah.
Do I want to pack 5 pounds of spotting scope and tripod and tripod head versus a large binocular versus a compact binocular? Do I want to take out a compact binocular so I can take a quick look, but then have my spotting scope? And a lot of that just has to do with the amount of weight that somebody wants to pack around. And I would say that the majority of hunters that I talk to, that the weight factor, especially the Western hunter who is out, that guy is out with a pack a lot, and the weight matters there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Totally.
I think that weighs into the decision a lot, is just the size of the product.
Well, so it's so funny because you start breaking stuff down. You're like, I do want the high objective. I want to zoom in, but then you're like, what does that come along with? And you're like, well, you're going to get shaky hands, so you need a tripod to stabilize it. And then not only that, but you probably need a quality tripod, and that's going to weigh something and cost something. And so you start piling on all these costs, and you're like, well, shoot. And then, so I hiked the Pacific Crest Trail this last summer, and I learned all about how much a pound can do to you and remove pain. And so you're like, so I'm like, yeah. So when you talk about not weighing your stuff down, I'm like, yeah, dude, I don't want any more than what I have to take. So when you tell me I need a spotting scope, this thing, a tripod to go along with a spotting scope, whereas maybe I could get away with maybe a nice little blend of like maybe a 10 or 12 power binocular, that if I'm going to be glassing open country, that's going to give me a really nice option without having to tote around a crazy tripod setup and be shaky. But man, I mean, I think this is why it's so difficult to read forums and to read blogs and to read articles and because everyone hunts differently. You're in Wyoming. I'm in the Pacific Northwest. Someone's in Colorado. Someone's in Southern California in the desert. Someone's in Europe somewhere, and everyone's got a different scenario, a different need, a different game animal. And someone's trying to not sell you, but someone's trying to inform you on, well, this is like in concrete, this is the one you need, where what I'm hearing from you is like, you need to decide what you need based on your budget, your, your needs, what you're going after, and what's important to you. Don't listen like a guy that runs a 10 by 42 binocular and says that's the one to use. He's saying that from how he uses it, not how you might use it. And if you align, then great. But if not, I'm personally not going to listen to let me rephrase. I'm going to take it with a grain of salt from a guy that glasses canyon sides out of the back of his rig. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a different style of hunting or glassing or birding or whatever you want to call it. So I know I've had a ton of questions answered already, and I wanted to. Do you have any saved rounds on that? Like anything I just said before I jump into the whole consumer direct question?
No, I don't think so. I think it's the internet is great for some things, but it's also everybody has an opinion, and so it's really hard to find information that is helpful.
Yeah.
Because you're going to find a lot of information, and you're going to find people who have very firm stance on just about everything, that if you're using anything but a 10 by 42, you're crazy. Or if you use this brand spotting scope, you're crazy. And so it's hard to find really good information out there. There's definitely a lot of it. And so, I tell people to do research. If they're asking about our brand, I definitely tell people to do their research about it, because one of the hurdles for people with a consumer direct brand like ours is that they can't just walk into a store and hold it, and because that's a big part of your satisfaction with the product is
that's what I was going to ask you about.
How it feels in your hand, and how it feels up against your face when you're using it, because some things just don't feel right, and that's a big part of your enjoyment. And if you're spending the kind of money that that these things cost, you want to make sure that you're comfortable with it that way. That's definitely the biggest hurdle with our product.
So
Is that they don't have the opportunity to do that, or it's not as easy as just walking into a store.
Totally. And that's one of my biggest curiosities about Maven. And that's kind of one of the driving reasons why I wanted to talk to you about your thoughts on optics and then your brand, is that I can walk into Cabela's and I can go hold a Vortex and a Swarovski or whatever it is, and Zeiss and all those things, but I can't walk into a store and hold a Maven optic.
Yep.
But I've clearly done research and I'm like, well, people are loving these optics. What is it about them? So how does Maven address those customers out there that are like, I'm kind of a hands-on kind of guy. How do I get around this?
Well, we have a demo program that we offer, so you can go on the site. You can get any of our products. It's done in a way that is similar to a sale, because we can't just send them out without covering ourselves, or we'd be out of business in a month.
Thanks for the demo.
Thanks. That was great. I think I'll keep it. So they're usually products that have either gone to a show with us, or have been used in our office. So they're not brand new, but they look great. They perform like a brand new optic.
Yeah.
And so we take your card, we send them out at a 10% discount from what a new one would be, because you do have the option of keeping them. And you'd just be buying a very lightly used product. So we had to figure out a way to do it so that if we sent it out and someone said, man, I just want to keep this, because that's what was happening initially when we said the program was, we send you something, you send it back. Well, we're sending something to people and they're wanting to keep it. So we satisfied that.
Yep.
So we have a demo program, but it's still, I mean, we charge your card, and then when we get it back, we credit your card right away.
Yeah.
And then you can make the decision. Do I want to make a custom? Do I want to try something else? So as far as from our end, that's about the best we can do. We're also looking at opening up some demo centers across the country.
Oh, fun.
Where people can go into, say, like a local archery range, mostly places that aren't, typical optics suppliers.
Yeah.
That they can go to their local archery range, and they'll have a sample of some of the products we sell. They won't necessarily sell them there, but you'll be able to order them from that location, order them straight from us. So that's how we're trying to get a physical product in the consumer's hands. But the other thing that we do a lot of, and this is kind of where I was going with the internet talk and all of the information out there, is the place that I think a lot of people get lost is the forums. And there's some great forums out there, but the anonymity that comes with the forum just opens it up to all kinds of things. Brands can be on there pumping out misinformation. You have people who say, oh, I'm a great optics tester, that just may not be, and they talk about things that aren't true. And so it's really hard to judge that. Now I talked to some of the people on some of the moderators for those things, for some of the forums out there, and they're fantastic. And what we try to do is get our optics in those people's hands, the people that really understand what a binocular does, what a spotting scope does, and how to differentiate them. So we try to get them in, and it kind of goes back to what our name is. A Maven is a trusted expert. And that's how we came up with our name, because those are the people that we want to use our products. Everybody knows a Maven out there. Everybody has some person that this guy knows the greatest books to read. I talked to him. This guy knows he's been out backpack hunting for years. He's the guy I'm going to talk to. That's a Maven. And that's where our name came from. It's also from a Malcolm Gladwell book that we all read called The Tipping Point. It has a great kind of story about Mavens.
That's cool. I like that. I didn't know that about the company.
Yeah. And so what we try to do is we go to these places, we go to these people that have high consideration from their crowds. They understand that these guys know what they're talking about. And we get them products to try. and to just be honest about. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I send them out to a lot of people to say, hey, check this out. Let me know what you think. I know you're going to be out in front of 1 million people and you have access to every brand's products out there, and just, you know, tell them how you think they compare. Because that's really, you know, I can talk all day about our products, but people like that third-party endorsement a lot more than they like to hear it from me. They you know, I think over time, I think we'll prove that we're building fantastic products at a price that you just can't get at a store. But that takes time, and we have to build up that trust. And the best way to do it is to put it in the hands of people who really know what they're talking about. So we spend a lot of time, a lot of effort getting our products to the people that have respect out there in the industry and know what they're talking about when they talk about optics.
That's really cool. Well, I know that I'm like, when I first saw Maven, I was like, oh, weird, interesting, consumer direct model. I'm like, I wonder how that's going to work. And as you were explaining how this this demo type program that you guys have, I was thinking, you know, it's really funny that I'm thinking like, I could go into a store, pick up a pair of binoculars, and look at an animal on the wall and be like, "Whoa, those look great." And I'm like, that makes no sense. I need to take these things home. I'm so stupid. Like my hands feel great on them. That's wonderful. But
yeah, and that's really all you're going to get in a store is just how they feel. You know, and you can feel quality in a product. You know, how the focus wheel turns, how the eye cups turn, how it feels on your face. You know, you need that. The performance of a product inside, you just don't get it.
And that's what,
you know, people, when they use our demo program, they can have them out for 2 weeks. You know, a lot of people will take them out on a hunt and try them out. And,
that's cool.
You know, as long as they send them back to us in the same condition we sent them, then we credit them the full amount.
That's really cool, because the only way to really understand like I said, I've owned a pair of binoculars for a long time, and only until recently did I actually see it come full circle and be like, okay, I get it now. I finally get it.
Right.
That makes sense. And so now I'm on this other journey of like, let's see where I can go. And the only way to understand the optic is to actually get in there. And that demo program's really cool, because a guy can now go and say, well, I want to try an 8x42. I want to try a 12. And see the difference in the optics quality and the shake or whatever, handshake or whatever it might be, and see like, cool, okay, this definitely doesn't work for my needs, and it's at no cost. You just send it back and get the refund. Like, how cool is that?
Yep. And that's, you know, I think anybody who has a direct consumer brand deals with that, you know, how do I get my product in the people's hand and let them touch it, let them feel it. That's the big hurdle with it. You know, it doesn't matter if it's clothing, if it's optics, if it's shoes, whatever it is. You've got to give the consumer the chance to try it and decide, you know, maybe I don't want this. It's only fair, and I think that's pretty common.
Yep. Well, man, I tell you what, I've learned a number of things in the last few minutes and through just talking with you that I'm like, cool, I can actually action these things and go forward and do some more research. So I have a couple more questions for you to round it out, and then we can call it complete until the next round, until I come up with another crazy question, or I'm like, okay, I'm at this new level and I have to call you.
Okay.
So, and it can be optics related or not related, or hunting related or not hunting related, but this podcast is built to help people have a better experience outdoors. And that can be a number of things, and everyone kind of has like their own favorite tip or trick, or, you know, the mental advice or whatever it might be. So I'm curious, as an outdoorsman in a company that is focused on the outdoors, what makes you go back to the field time and again? And then what is your biggest lesson learned, or what's your favorite, like, kind of, hey, you should think about this or consider this to improve your time outside?
Yeah, you know, I think one of the big, when you're in the outdoors industry, you get the question a lot of times, or people that want to get into it and thinking that because you work in the outdoor industry means you're outdoors all the time. And it's like the exact opposite is that, it's like you get into the hunting industry and I hunt less than I ever have.
Right.
Just because, and when it's your own business, you pour your heart into it. And
Yep.
so you spend a lot of time doing it. But I think what keeps me going outside has changed throughout my life. But right now it's the thing that gets me out there, aside from, I'm not a solo hunter. I can appreciate that kind of stuff, or a solo backpacker. I love getting out with my friends and with my family.
Cool.
And so that to me is why I get out there. But probably more than anything now is just so I can disconnect.
Yeah.
That is really, in this day and age, you are constantly connected.
Mm.
And if somebody has a question and it's Sunday afternoon, and we have a very, very small company, and we all answer the customer service calls. We ship, we pack. And so we are constantly working on this. And, it'll be a Sunday afternoon and we get a call and it's a customer. They're like, oh, wow, I thought I was going to leave a message, and so, we're talking to people every day, all day. And really the only time I can disconnect is when I just get outside and get away from it all, leave my phone at home, or just, I put it on airplane mode and I just use it as a camera. But it is so nice to disconnect. And where I live, I'm a half an hour away from just being completely away from everybody. That's one of the beauties of Wyoming, is it is truly still like that, is I can go out a very short distance from our office, from my home, and I can be away from, I can go out on a really nice mountain biking trail and not see a soul.
That's
So
cool.
that's, it's like the only way I can disconnect. And so it started to be more about that's where I can go and turn my phone off and not stare at my computer screen.
That's cool.
So I have to believe that's got to be true for a lot of people.
Definitely.
It's like the only place that you can't get calls or get texts.
Well, and I think it evolves for people. I think at first people are like, I really enjoy being outside and hunting. And then as they grow older, they're like, oh, you know what I really enjoy about this is that I'm not inundated with phone calls and people wanting my attention, and I can kind of just go clear my mind. And I mean, the outdoors does that for people. I experienced that my entire life. And then this past summer, like an extreme version of disconnecting. And I was like, wow, like this is why we go into the wilderness it's pretty. I get it. Everything can be pretty, but really
everybody does it for those reasons. Yeah. Everybody does it for those reasons, to be out there. But I think to see the mountains, to see the animals, to breathe the fresh air. But it's like for me anyway, it's being able to unplug and not worry about my phone buzzing in my pocket, that it's an important thing that I got to make a decision on, and that needs to happen right now. And then I need to call this guy, and then I need, it's that's not a possibility. That it's just, I can relax and think about riding down that trail. So
cool.
I think that's what keeps me going out there.
Yeah.
It's nice living in the middle of that, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't, as far as the tips and tricks, I guess one of the things that I tell people, on optics use that seems obvious to me, but the more I go out, I catch myself doing it wrong, is start close. When you're out and if you're out hunting, and actually out doing anything, if you're a wildlife observer, whether it's bird watching or just any of the wildlife, people tend to, when you're looking through a binocular or looking through a spotting scope, they start at the farthest away and work towards them. But if you're a hunter, would you rather walk 200 yards or a mile and a half? That's really why you have those products, is to to help you to magnify and start close. And how many times have you been out there and you busted something that was, 50 yards away that you had no idea because you were looking on the opposite hillside? Yeah. I think more times than not, people get out there and they don't spend their time. They don't kind of grid out what they're going to look. If you're going to spend 4 or 5 hours sitting there glassing, you better, have a plan. And to me, the plan is you should always start close.
That's great. I will definitely be using that going forward because I couldn't agree more. I don't want to walk further than what I have to.
Yeah.
Let's go easy, right?
I think that to me is key is to start close. I think a lot of people don't do that. And it's, I catch myself because I think for me, it's cool to use our products and know how well they work, far away. So I don't need the optics to see 50 yards, but there's a lot you can see within that 50 yards.
Well, Brendon, I appreciate it. Thanks for the time. No
problem.
Do you want to do a quick, how can people find Maven and that kind of stuff? So people, if they have questions, want to check out the products?
Sure. Our website is mavenbuilt.com. You can go on there. We have stock products that ship within 3 business days if it's over a weekend, but almost everything, if you're ordering during the week, ships the next day. You can also build custom units in all of our high-end series. Those take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, depending on if you expedite. You can find us all over social media, Facebook, Instagram. We're very active there. It's a great way to stay in touch with our customers. And we also love for people to call and visit. So we're, like I said, we're available all the time. You're almost always talking to one of the co-owners. But no matter who you're talking to, you're talking to somebody who has a very good feel for the products. And I think that's about it.
Yeah. And I'll include those links in the show notes so people can click on something and actually go to the website. And then I just want to confirm, you guys have from what I remember during the chat, you guys have a couple lines, like a mid-range and a high end, and then you guys binocular spotting scopes and maybe rifle scopes in the future?
Yeah, we'll be introducing rifle scopes probably April, May next year.
Cool.
Those will be available. We'll probably start pre-selling those in January. But yeah, we have our high end that we consider competes with the best of the best in the world. Our B series binoculars, S series scopes, and then we introduced a mid-range line called the C series this past year, and those have been fantastic.
Cool.
Wanted to have a way to introduce people to our brand that we were maybe missing out on for. There's a lot of folks out there that this will be the best binocular they ever need. Mm-hmm. There's if that one is doing it for you and you never need to upgrade, that's fine with us. But we wanted to have something there for those people, so we introduced those. We'll probably be expanding on that line a little bit next year as well.
Cool. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it. You blew my mind with a couple things, and I know I learned something. So hopefully, I know other people will. So. Appreciate the time.
Well, you can always call back if you have more questions.
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to it. I'll take you up on it.
Yeah.
Thanks,
all right,
man.
Thanks a lot, Emory.
Thanks. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Bioland Podcast. Special thanks to Brendon and the team at Maven for being willing to come on and talk to me and allow me to ask the stupid questions so that others may know what they're getting into and understanding the difference between the numbers and the size of the objective and the type of glass and what you're getting with the money and return on investment. Those are some serious and important questions that not a whole lot of people ask. And the fact that Brendon was able to address these in a really easy fashion just shows how much he knows about the product and how much he cares about the industry. So special thanks to him and Maven. This podcast is built to help you have a better experience. If there's a topic out there that you don't understand or you want to know more about that I can research for you, email me, find me at byland.co, and let me know what you're struggling with. Let me know how you're thinking about the backcountry and all that stuff. If I can do a podcast for you, I would love to. So hit me up anytime. And thank you so much for tuning in. You can find out more about Maven in the show notes and on their website at mavenbuilt.com. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. And until then, enjoy the backcountry because it's an incredible place. Enjoy the holidays.